Thank you very much for taking me. So I was just curious about Bill O'Reilly. You said Bill O'Reilly off camera is completely different from on camera. So I was wondering, is Bill O'Reilly a Catholic off camera?
Well, I don't know him well enough to say that. I can only tell you and comment on what I suspect. I suspect he's an atheist. I say that without any information at all. He has never said anything, off camera to me that I'm really one of you. Although I will tell you a bit of an aside that there's many, many, many atheists at Fox News. Many, many, many atheists at Fox News. In fact, I cannot remember a single time in all of my visits at Fox News, and there's been over a dozen, that somebody has not told me that they're an atheist. Whether it's the camera guy or the makeup person or whatever, somebody always tells me. Now, as far as Bill O'Reilly is concerned, I suspect he's an atheist. I suspect that he is simply playing a part for money. We have to understand, of course, and I think everybody on this call understands, that being an atheist doesn't necessarily make you a good person. And I think that my personal suspicion, we all have our good guys and our bad guys. And my personal suspicion is that Bill O'Reilly is one of the many atheists out there who are totally faking it in order to make money. I don't believe that any man or any person can be a professional skeptic all the time to the level that he's a professional skeptic. I don't believe that anybody who can say, come on, over and over again, as a matter of course, can get down on his knees and go to church and believe that stuff. I don't
again, David, I'm going to do a bill on you and interrupt you. We can. I've got a vague understanding of American society, which is quite different to what it is here, and I can understand, by reason of that, why it is difficult for some atheists to publicly come out. Bill O'Reilly, you say, is doing it for money. I'm not going to disagree.
I suspect. Yeah. I don't want to say I
know.
No,
don't worry. You won't get sued. I do. Don't worry about it. I'm not on this show.
Just a suspicion.
Yeah. He may be doing it for money and covering up for money, but there is a much more crucial segment of American society, so far as I understand it, who cannot say that they're atheists for fear of things like losing their jobs or being thrown out of their apartments and this sort of discrimination. Well, just 1 second, Thunder. 1 second, Thunder. In your time and your work that you've done with American atheists, have you seen any positive, optimistic evidence that sort of thing is changing, that people are feeling much more comfortable to come out as atheists now in America?
I have absolutely no doubt in that at all. And the best example that I can give you, first of all, I can tell you that I suspect that I was fired at one time for being an atheist. And I have a very, very strong, reasonable suspicion because of, somebody actually told me that. But I'll give you a very good measurement device, and I'm actually wearing it. Okay, I wear American atheist clothing all the time, especially out in public. I wear my atheist clothing out in public all the time. Now, when I started doing that 15 years ago, I got nasty comments. People would come up to me just to tell me how wrong I was. I got snide remarks all the time. And I'm telling you that I wear these shirts not only here in New Jersey, I wear them on planes. I wore it on the way to Skepticon, to Missouri. I wear it to California. I wear it to Texas. Everywhere I go, I wear an American Atheist shirt, front and back. I got to tell you, it's been years since somebody gave me something negative. And every time now, I get a thumbs up from somebody. I get a wink from somebody. Every time I get a conversation. Every time. The change is palpable. And if I had been keeping a data book of showing bad comments and good comments, you'd see a complete shift. I mean, a 100% shift in the past 15 years from going from all bad to all good.
Well, that's encouraging.
That's great. Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, I interrupted Thunder, and I know Aaron also wants to come back as well. Thunder, then Aaron. and then back to Remy.
Obama's an atheist.
I'm sorry?
Obama, do you think he's an atheist?
If he's an atheist, he's not a very good one. I would like to think that he was an atheist, but I would also like to think if we had an atheist in office that he would get rid of the faith-based initiatives right away and not take 3 years to get rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So if he's an atheist, he's a politician first.
I'm going to insist. I'm going to insist that we move on at speed, though. Oren next, then back to Remy, and then we'll take the next caller. I'm sorry, we've only got an hour left. We've already gone halfway through the show. Oren, then Dave, back to Remy.
At Skepticon, you gave a very moving speech. I was very impressed with your performance, and in that, you mentioned that all these people that identify as skeptics would identify as that instead of atheists. Even if atheist applied, they would still identify as skeptics. And a lot of people, and I know this myself, I was one of them for 15 years. I identified as agnostic because I didn't understand the true meaning of atheist. I thought it was a choice that you would either be agnostic or you would be atheist. I didn't realize that most atheists are agnostic. This is the point we were just arguing about before. Are you a Gnostic atheist or are you an agnostic atheist? So you asked that we declare ourselves, whether we are skeptics, whether we normally identify as agnostics, that we would come out and acknowledge that we are atheists. And that was when I decided to come up with this shirt.
Hey, I like that. That's a pretty good shirt. We should give those out. We should give those out at the rally.
We'll come to the rally.
You know what?
We'll come to the rally in a moment, David. No, David,
Yeah.
I'm putting a bill on you. We'll come to the rally in a moment. Back to Remy for a last word before we move on to the next caller. Remy.
Right. So I personally come from France. I'm French, and I've never I have a Catholic tradition, but from my parents never indoctrinated me anything. I went to a Catholic school. I went to the religious classes, but it was I was always skeptic about religion. And from the point of view of France, right now I live in Canada, and but I still see USA from the outside. And from the point of view of France, the USA becomes a little scary, like a lot of religious candidates, and just that for that matter, and all those laws that goes for restraining liberties because of copyright infringement or because of terrorism and stuff like that. So are you really saying that it's getting better on that side, or are we going to get out of the tunnel first?
Remy, I may appear to be being rude. I think we've got your point, and I'll ask the panel to address that whilst I remove you and bring in the next caller. But thank you very much for your patience, and I'm sorry we didn't give you more time.
No problem, that's fine.
Who wants to address that as I bring in the next caller?
Well, I'll take it. Bring in the next caller. I do want to say yes, absolutely, it's getting better. What we're seeing from the religious right now is panic. What we're seeing is a fear. That's a palpable fear, and I think it's going to be. I think we're looking at the not the final throes, but some final throes as people realize that being Jesus-y is not the end all and be all of the answer.
You say that, David, though I've been watching the Republican nominations and the hustings that are going on, and there's not one of them that isn't saying that they're a Bible-bashing, Jesus-believing, God-loving, fearing person. We're still a long way. We're still a long way from.
That God didn't tell me.
Yeah, so I mean. That's why, and perhaps it's because I see that side of America, that's why I remain somewhat pessimistic. Do you think it's possible for anyone to be elected to that sort of level of high office and be an outspoken or open atheist at the same time?
Not right now. Right now, no, but I believe it's going to happen.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
How long?
It's 20 years. 20 years.
It's not
20 years. It's not an awfully long time. It's an evolutionary process. What we have right now is A huge amount of young people are non-theistic, atheists. A huge amount of the religious people are old and they're going to die soon. And the international pressure that we're getting from Canada and Europe is just palpable. The God of the gaps is getting smaller and smaller every day. We will win this war as long as we keep up the pressure, as long as we keep up the effort, as long as we keep raising our voices and fighting outside the movement instead of each other. That's a big thing. We can win. And in 20 years, by the time I'm an old man and retired from American Atheists, we will have defeated that prejudice and that bigotry.
I hope so. I'm going to move on to the next caller, and can I just remind you, we are taking calls. Send a contact request to a Magic Sandwich Show on Skype. I've got 3 or 4 callers already lined up, and I know that there are requests waiting. I can't guarantee that we're going to get everyone on the show, but we have our next. Well, we've got the next caller on. If we can just concentrate on callers for now. Colin, if he's not with us, then Aaron, it's back to you. But Colin, are you with us?
Yes, I think I am.
Oh, good. Welcome to the show.
Sorry, I don't have the right version of Skype.
Okay. We can hear you perfectly well.
First, I'd like to say that I am going to the Reason Rally and the convention, so thanks, Dave, for setting that up.
Great. I'm glad to hear you.
I'm a college student from rural South Dakota, so it'll be a real huge shock to my system to be surrounded by people who actually think like me.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be an awesome experience. I remember the first time I felt that, and this is going to be a fantastic experience for everybody. It's Atheist Woodstock.
Yeah. So I was a Christian apologist for several years, and I'd like to ask you about a couple of the common tactics that I use and modern apologists use a lot, and usually unwittingly. A few thoughts that I'd like to throw out, and just hopefully we can get through them pretty quickly so I don't take up too much time. Thunderfoot, you recently made some great videos about Dr. Craig, and thanks for that. They were absolutely hilarious. There's something else that he says a lot that I'd like to hear your comment on. He says that... Can I just
pause you very briefly there? Concordance has to leave us. Can I ask for a big thumbs up for Concordance? He's very busy today. He's got to leave us, but thanks for your attendance, Concordance.
Thanks, Concordance.
Sorry, Colin, back to you.
All right. So something that Dr. Craig says a lot is that scientists come up with theories specifically to avoid the theistic conclusion. So, for example, he says that scientists suggest the multiverse theories specifically to refute the fine-tuning argument for God, or rejecting the idea of the Big Bang was originally because they didn't want to face the obvious and inescapable conclusion that God was the first cause. This kind of comes back from Romans theology, where the wise are actively rejecting God. What do you think about that? I've heard him say it a lot.
Well, that's 2 things. First of all, it's the persecution complex. That this is all about me. That science is all about putting me down. That science is all about putting down God. Science is about the quest for knowledge. And when they make it about themselves, they elevate themselves while victimizing themselves. They make them look like the trampled stepchild that's being beaten down by evil science that's out to get it, when in reality, science is just progressing as it always has progressed, asking the questions, answering the questions, and, oh, what do you know? None of the scientific discoveries shows that any of the mythologies of yesteryear are true. So what they're doing is they're saying, well, yeah, it proves us true, but that's because they're evil and they're trying to disprove us. They're putting religion on a pedestal and trying to pretend that science is down beneath it, trying to shoot it down, when in reality, science isn't paying much attention to religion. It's just science, and it's just progressing, and it's just making religion look sillier and sillier with every step. So this is how religion deals with it. They try and make themselves the victim so that we can feel sorry for them and make science look like some sort of a bully, when science just keeps winning because religion is just wrong.
Can we go to Thunder? Because I think it was actually aimed more at Thunder. Thunder next.
Yeah, I mean, science is almost exclusively about forming predictive models of utility about reality. And one of the reasons that people get confused with religion here is one of the ways that you can actually form models is by seeing if the model actually explains what is already observed. So magic explains everything. It explains absolutely everything. There is no unknown that cannot be explained by magic or by God or by invisible pixie dust. Right? But the problem with all of those expansive concepts is they have no predictive capability, none whatsoever. And this is where science wins, is because science makes predictions, and the metric that we use to distinguish good models from bad ones is, can they make good predictions? And in this, religion is a singular failure. Religion is just an abysmal way of forming predictive models, whereas science works. It's that simple. Yeah, that's why we're talking on the internet now.
I mean, if it's all right if I call you Colin, I don't want to really get too bogged down in a William Lane Craig discussion, because it's quite clear that he comes with an agenda. He uses outdated arguments that are not part of mainstream philosophy, and I have no respect for him. He talks absolute bullshit, and I think that his new name that Thunder gave him, Billy Two Citations, is fitting. But you had other points. Let's move on to your other points.
Yeah, I agree. I was just using Craig.
I didn't get to address that first one.
Sorry, Aaron, and then Aaron first, and then back to you, Colin. Sorry.
Right. William Lane Craig is also openly dishonest because he's talking about scientific theory in a way that does not apply for somebody with a man of his claimed education.
Colin, back to you. You haven't muted your mic though, Aaron.
Actually, no, there's one of the points to be made is that William Lane Craig is a mere layman when it comes to the scientific endeavor, and his arguments are frankly embarrassing when he speaks on scientific matters.
I mean, they are.
That's just a parody of what Craig says about. It's a simple appeal to authority, and Craig makes it that, I'm a professional philosopher. Well,
basically, look at just the his mainstay argument, the Kalam cosmological argument, which he resurrected about 300 years ago, which no one else really uses. And those that do use it, interestingly enough, I've seen Muslims use that to persuade me that Allah exists. I'm sorry, it's absolute nonsense. Let's move on to the second point. I don't want to waste any more time on Craig.
Yeah, I was just using Craig as an example of something I see a lot nowadays. Another thing I see a lot is we as atheists are often accused of attacking a God that our theist opponents, quote, don't believe in either. They'll say, we don't believe in that God either. You're attacking a God that we don't think exists. And the more intellectual apologists we debate will say the popular conception of God is nonsensical. We don't really believe in that God. The God who killed all those babies in the Old Testament, we don't really believe in that God. Our God is more the all-good, all-knowing, et cetera, et cetera. And we often come back with, well, that's not what most people believe in, and we're talking about what most people believe in, not what the God of the theologians. So what's your response to, how would you respond to that?
Before I go to David first, my response would always be, if you're having a discussion with anyone, to ask them what they mean when they say something. And if they say, well, I believe in God, and they say, but it's not the God that you sort of understand, then ask them exactly what is it that they believe in. Is this God a physical entity? Does he interact with the world? Does he listen to prayers? Can he stop hurricanes hitting America? That sort of, get them to define precisely what they believe in. And you'll find it's just as ridiculous as those that believe in the Bible. David.
Well, and when you're asking them what they believe in, ask them to defend why they believe it. What you're dealing with when you're dealing with people, I don't believe in that God, I believe in this God. This is basically, it's the epitome really of cafeteria Christianity or cafeteria deism, where people are inventing their own God and then saying, well, you can't argue against me because I don't believe in the God of the Old Testament. I believe in this other God that loves everybody and does all this good stuff and has all these attributes. Well, where do you get those attributes? Well, I get them from the Bible. or I get them from X. And then you can take them to, well, why don't you believe these other attributes that are in the same book that you think are true, that you think is real? Get them to explain why they think, not only what God do they believe in, but why they think that specific character set is in there and not other character sets, where they make the defining factor. A lot of times, and this is something that religion does a lot of times religious people, in fact, almost all the time, they will invent their own God and then say that it's objectively true. And they'll say that it's objectively true after making very subjective arguments, or very subjective, or taking very subjective measures to reach this objective truth. Challenge them on that, and you'll grind them into the stone.
You might also want to approach them in this way. I don't know. I was going to start the show with this little thought for the day. I read about a god recently, and this god was a god that created the heavens and the earth. He created everything on the earth. He created man. But after some time, he got a little bit pissed off with man and the way man was behaving, so he flooded the entire earth. He made it rain day and night until the waters covered the highest mountains. Only 2 people survived because they had built a boat. Does that story sound familiar? Do you know which god I'm talking about?
Gilgamesh.
It could well be, but on this occasion it's actually Zeus. Greek mythology contains exactly the same flood story as the Bible does.
But that's a myth. That's not real.
Oh, of course.
Well, that means it's true, right?
Just,
Colin. Sorry, Thunder, then back to Colin.
Okay. Brief point on the, people sort of say, well, I don't believe in all that Old Testament, with the slaughter of children, all that sort of thing. That's clearly mythology. Well, coming back to William Lee Craig just for a brief moment, because I've got an exact quote of him here. He says that because he believes in a divine command morality, and this is an exact quote, that the death of these children, that's the children in the Old Testament, meant their salvation. They were the recipients of an infinite good. Now, this is the man who pimps himself as this great defender of Christianity, justifying the genocide of children in the exact phrase, they were the recipients of an infinite good. And it's just how fucked up religion can make you.
Yep.
See, I'm tired of talking about William Lane Craig because he's one of those people who, like Ray Comfort, wants to pull himself up on someone else's bootstraps. He says that he will not debate anybody but a PhD. Why? Because he's trying to make himself look better than he is. The man is not qualified to debate me. He shouldn't be setting the criteria about who he will or who he will not debate.
Okay, we're going to go back to the callers. We've got other people waiting, and we're running very short of time. This show's whizzing past. Colin, back to you for your last point, and then we're going to have to move on. I'm sorry.
All right, my last one's pretty quick. So,
sure.
One thing that apologists often do is kind of a burden of proof shift. This is kind of one of the things that was central to me coming out of Christianity, was realizing that believers do have the burden of proof to demonstrate what they believe is true. What happens, though, a lot of times is apologists will make a plausible sounding argument that may be completely fallacious, but on the face of it, it seems plausible at a first glance. Do we then, as atheists, have a sort of burden of proof to show why it's not plausible? Is the ball sort of in our court in that sense? And that's my last thought.
Well, before you go, there's another question I want to ask you, Colin, before you go, but whilst the panel are addressing that point. Thunder, I think you were about to speak.
Was I?
Oh, I thought somebody was.
I would like to say that it would really depend on the setting. Okay, it would really depend on the setting. If you have an opportunity to not to ask, but to demonstrate that if you're in a debate setting and you have a reply and you have a rebuttal and you have an opportunity to say, okay, this is why it's wrong. And then to go on and say, they do this all the time because they have nothing. That's great. But if you're in a situation, for instance, for instance, on a TV show, on Bill O'Reilly or something like that, where you've got seconds to respond, no. Then you have to say something real quick and real pungent, so that people can see the example as flawed, and that's not always an easy thing to do.
No, it's not. But Colin, before you go, I want to ask you this, and it's a question that I try and ask all former theists that call in. Tell us as briefly as you can, what was your personal experience of offloading your religious beliefs? Were there any specific arguments or matters that made you change your mind, or was it just a slow sort of erosional process?
It was mostly a slow erosional process, but if there's one thing that was really the linchpin of it, it was redaction criticism. So studying the Gospel, studying the New Testament, the documentation of it, how it evolved, seeing the legend grow through it, and seeing all the parallels of Christianity to things like Mormonism or Islam or any other religion that we see today, seeing how all these started off the same way, and the things that are specifically off about Christianity and the textual part of it.